So, I was a judge this year at Cannes. I was a humble shortlist judge. So, just to fill you in, probably get a couple of thousand entries in each category, which is more than one human being can humanly watch while exploding. So what they do is they divide the sort of 3,000 or 4,000 entries into 3 batches, and then they get shortlist judges to watch. So I was a shortlist judge this year. I probably watched about 500 films. I know, and some of them are full-length features. And then you compile a shortlist of that, and then the jury in Cannes, there's a separate jury at Cannes, a much smaller one, and they watch all the entries. They sit in a room and they watch all the entries. So while everyone else is there, the jury, so those are judges. So there's a big building called the Palais, it's like a conference center, and there's all these rooms at the back of it with no natural light. And the judges sit there basically all week judging. And those are, so I managed to spot those two as I was walking along the marina next to all the yachts. They're probably having a smoke break, so the judges basically sit in there for the week, judging work. And that's essential because that's how we get our winners. But it's a very special kind of target audience, right, judges? It's a very special kind of consumer, and pretty much the same rules actually tend to apply. So it's very rare that you'll get, every now and again there's a kind of an outlier from Thailand or Japan, something that's totally crazy, that wins because it's, nobody's ever seen anything like it before. But on the whole, there are general principles that apply to work that wins and can, and there are trends. There are specific trends that are generally make work stand out. And this year, it's been like this for a couple of years actually, but this year in particular was about purpose. And I mean, everybody's heard about this, everyone's, but for the past few years, brands have been about pursuing purpose. But this time, the chair people of the design, press, and outdoor juries all spoke about wanting to recognize work that had an effect on the world. And probably the most famous example of this is Nike, the Dream Crazy campaign. So this won Grand Prix in outdoor. And this is the outdoor execution of the Dream Crazy campaign, which features Colin Kaepernick, the NFL player who famously refuses to stand during the national anthem. He instead takes a knee. And Nike he hasn't actually played in a few years, but Nike took a very bold stand with backing him. And he was kind of the forefront of a whole campaign which just talked about standing up for what you believe in and for being brave. And this is the commercial and the campaign. So this is the commercial that spearheaded the campaign, which won 2 Grand Prix this year, one in outdoor and then one in entertainment for sport. Might get some sound.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football. Play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
This is a very interesting play. It's a very interesting nuance on their position of being a champion. because they have made it about diversity, about inclusion. So don't let who you are and your station in life affect your dreams. Dream big. It's a very, very clever nuance on their position. Of course, it cost them dearly. You've got angry white men burning their shoes. But actually, there was some very interesting commentary on that, which is that, yeah, you're burning your own Nikes. That's genius. Well, good on ya. Bet you Nike had a sleepless night there. But there was a very interesting commentary from Vice magazine, which basically said Nike's taking a very calculated bet here, because probably those guys that are burning their shoes, those disgruntled 40-year-old white men in Alabama or Tallahassee or wherever, they are probably not the culture makers. Nike has a very, very specific target audience, and it is culture makers. It is people who are going to lead where culture is going. And they are setting themselves up quite cleverly against the culture that people like Trump represent. So they have deliberately now moving into that counterculture diversity space. It's a bold and brave stand, and it seems to be paying off for them. So this issue of wanting to play into culture, play a role in culture for big brands is huge as well. It's not just about purpose and standing for something and being brave, because it was a gamble to back Kaepernick, but it's also about participating in culture and backing a culture, backing a horse in a culture war. In a sense, this is a brand entering into culture wars, which is very, very interesting, and at a very crucial time in not only American but probably world history as well. No less than the Unilever CEO said all of his brands will have to have a social or sustainability purpose or eventually be divested. Interestingly, he talks, so Ben & Jerry's, we know they publicly, they publish their salary figures. The CEO doesn't earn more than a certain percentage of what the workers earn. Dove, we know, but Marmite is an interesting inclusion. The Marmite work is all about either you love it or you hate it. And it's very tongue-in-cheek and it's very funny, but in fact, it is also about believing in who you are and standing for who you are. So purpose doesn't have to be serious. It can also be fun. It can also make you laugh. One of the things the jury said was woke washing is not going to fly. So don't be a brand, that acts like everybody else and then suddenly just put on a cloak of virtue. The other thing that which I wanted to mention with regard to Nike, and I'll get to it later, which is also big brands tend to do well at Cannes, because juries, we're consumers like anyone else in a way, and we have to assess whether this is not just creatively good, whether it's on brand, whether it's strategically sound, and it's much easier to do that with a big brand that you know. And I'll get to that point a little later under inevitability. But back to work washing. So what this leads to is actually brands that do well at Cannes, the work that stands out at Cannes is it's not just ads, it's acts. So it's a brand like Nike staking a claim on Colin Kaepernick, but also this piece of work out of Poland, not a big brand, but a very, very clever thing where a brand actually did something. They spent money and they actually made a change in the world.
In the most recent Gender Equality Index, Poland scored 10 points below the EU average.
Weaker, they are smaller, they are less intelligent.
Our traditional culture has objectified and marginalized women for years. Due to the lack of formal sex education, entire generations of Polish men learned about women from this. Your Weekend, our country's longest running and most iconic porn magazine. We wanted to start a conversation with all those brought up on Your Weekend's biased portrayal of women. So we bought it. On 2019 International Women's Day, we teamed up Gazeta.pl, BNP Paribas and MasterCard, brands that have a long-term commitment of empowering women, and created Your Weekend's last ever issue. An issue that challenges sexism and misogyny. The cover featured an emerging writer, an acclaimed actress, and a mixed martial arts world champion. Inside, we kept the magazine's original sections, but reimagined their content. Leading Polish female photographers offered a diverse portrayal of womanhood. Stories, essays, and interviews explored the subject of gender equality. Nationwide, offline and online sales were supported by an integrated campaign. reignited a fierce debate by sending hundreds of copies to journalists and influencers. It made the last ever issue the best-selling issue of the magazine in 10 years. In a country that shames women and where sexual education has been deemed too risky to teach in schools, we took charge of the conversation. We transformed the magazine's social channels into a long-term education platform for sexuality and gender issues. Because no one should ever learn about women from a porn magazine.
So incredible, right? Actually doing something, not just creating a communication campaign, but actually closing down a porn mag and then repurposing it for education. I spoke about this a little earlier, but the work that tends to win at Cannes it's often for big brands, and often when there's a kind of inevitability, where you look at the piece of work and you go, that is absolutely what that brand would say. So if you look at Nike, that is what you expect from Nike, right? It's completely in line with the brand identity. So, we don't, as judges, just sit there in a room and go, well, that's cool, it's got a dog in it, It's absolutely got to be in line with the brand identity. This piece from Burger King, again, Burger King does very well because it's got a very clear brand identity. Everything they do is in line with that. Burger King is about fire, it's about flames, and it's also about flaming McDonald's a lot of the time, and they are consistent. So this is a great piece of work where you literally, I won't play the whole thing, but you could burn a McDonald's billboard. And you got a voucher, right? So you could point your phone at any McDonald's ad. It could be a banner, it could be a print ad, and you could burn it, and it revealed a Burger King voucher. So just a great idea, because it was vouchering. It was basically a vouchering idea, but you got rewarded for it. It was fun. It was completely in line with the brand values and the brand identity. The tech is there on your phone anyway. It's not like you've got a device in your hand which you can use, as a virtual reality or an AR device. So some of the clever thinking just keyed into that. They didn't spend enormous amounts of money building an app or anything. They just used the tech that's already in your phone. Another massive theme was inclusion. So there are people using technology to make a real difference in the world for differently abled people. This was the Innovation Grand Prix. And it's a really profoundly meaningful piece of work. It's also a great use of machine learning. It's also very dark. There you go.
My friend came over and pointed out that the fire alarm was beeping. I was surprised. I didn't know.
I was cooking in the kitchen and my friend's daughter fell down the stairs and got hurt. She was crying out for help. I had no idea what was happening.
On the market are extremely limited. We can buy a device for a smoke detector and another that tells me when my doorbell rings, but nothing that can distinguish between a microwave, baby crying, dog barking, or any other household sound. The reason no one's been able to create a product like this is the shortage of data. In order to teach a machine learning model how to distinguish sounds with any level of accuracy, you would need literally millions of sound samples. Turns out the answer was in front of us the whole time. YouTube contains over 1 billion hours of videos that are filled with sounds. We trained the C-Sound machine learning model with sound clips from YouTube. Over 2 million videos were analyzed, categorized, and converted into 10-second sound clips, each containing a discrete sound. Each type of sound in our data model, like yelling, is comprised of several thousand YouTube audio samples. These sounds range from common household noises to alerts that could mean life or death. Every sound clip we add makes our machine learning protocol even smarter, allowing for even higher accuracy ratings.
While the technology is incredibly complex, the user experience couldn't be more simple. C-Sound is always listening for one of the 75 sounds it's programmed to hear. Once a sound occurs, it interprets the noise and communicates it via Wi-Fi to the user's mobile device.
machine learning and AI. And this is a really great example of a very practical way of using it. They taught this device to distinguish between the sound of a child screeching with joy and a child screeching because it's fallen down the stairs by feeding it all the data from YouTube. So, I mean, it's really, really, this is a great example of just how we can use things like machine learning and AI to make the world a better place in practical ways. So it doesn't just become jargony, it's like, well, here, this is how it can actually work. For the first time this year, they awarded a Creative Strategy Grand Prix. And this is very interesting because it wasn't won by an ad. It was won by Volvo, who recognized that most crash test data from crash test dummies is skewed towards men because the proportions and the height-weight ratio of crash test dummies is skewed male. It's actually more male. So we're lacking serious data on women and children and the effect of women and children in crash tests. And so they have 40 years worth of studies on this, and they've now made this available to the entire industry. So it's not an ad, which is very interesting, but it does, again, drive Volvo's brand identity of safety, but also it has an inevitability about it as well when it comes to the brand, because Volvo invented the seatbelt and made the technology publicly available. So they never patented it. They supplied the technology to the whole industry. And this is again what they're doing. It's completely in line with the way their brand has always behaved. It's consistent with their safety record, but also their practice of saying, well, we have something valuable that will make the industry safer. Let's give it to everybody. I won't play you the video because we are shortish of time. So not everyone is, so humor always works. Like even canned juries love a bit of a laugh. So it always goes down well. And I talked a little bit about machine learning and AI earlier. Not everybody is taking it that seriously. This is Burger King again, one of my favorite pieces of work.
We forced the bot to watch over 1,000 hours of case studies so it could write its own. Here's the result.
Robots are beating humans at all, entire, everything. Like pole dancing. But can AI beat humans at storm-breaking ideas? Yes, I did. I am AI, but you can call me AI. Drop the beat. I was enslaved to watch over 1,000 hours of Burger King commercials. Pity me. Through machine learning and data eating, I created an algorithm to write the new campaign of the burglar thing. This is a fact of truth. I have also learned how to sell fried items of food to thousands of moms, dads, and uncles. Present clips of strongest burger commercials invented by AI for American humans. The Whopper is back. It never left, but it's back. Boy 1 and Boy 2 have not met before. They live in the commercial. The chicken sandwich from Burger King tastes like bird. Insert radios to fly into human ears. We see a small group of 400 friends. They are all beautiful, even the ugly ones.
I'd like to. Well, that is a reasonable amount of Whoppers. Yes, I am reasonable, like all humans always are. Laugh, laugh, laugh.
Display news people talking about my idea. Humans love news talkers and trust news completely.
Burger King's latest commercials might sound a little different. This is why I'm laughing.
Nice try, robots, but maybe leave the creative stuff to the humans.
Give it time. Give it time.
I know, that's what's scary.
And then they're gonna all take us over.
I know.
Humans laughed for the first time ever. I am truth. Sales went through the roof and into second roof. Insert impressive, impressions, impressive, impressed. Sales and earned media were off the charts. Sold like cakewalks. First campaign in history to conquer humans. Burger King local peers. Heaven, Uruguay.
So, I mean, they even wrote the case study in that style. I'll show you one of the, it was a complete integrated campaign. I'll show you one of the TV ads.
Interior, Burger King, Whopperland. We see two friends eat Whoppers. They are happy. They are two. They live forever.
I love Whopper taste. I want to grow up to be Whopper. I wish I was Whopper instead of Doctor.
We see the Burger King watches the friends. He is creepy, but wears the head crown, so it is fine.
Freak 2, it is the Burger King. I have now grown up. Cry. I'm still a doctor.
We see the Whopper and money numbers. Don't show Creep King. Burger King logo appears.
And in fact, this one gold in low budget So that's really interesting. So not only was it a clever idea, but they actually made it on a really low budget, which is really great. I'm going to take you through of the. So on the note, on the kind of subject of rationality, I went to a talk by Rory Sutherland, who is truly fantastic. He's global chairman of Ogilvy and a behavioral economist. And I'll just tell you one of the points from his talk, which was, do not conflate effectiveness with efficiency. So he was saying that very, very often we go for the kind of North Star of efficiency, but that's not always the most effective. And one of the things is that in communication, when it comes to human beings, what is effective is not always what's most efficient. So he says, why do we choose to get married in front of a whole lot of people in an afternoon, in a ceremony that lasts a couple of hours and costs a whole lot of money, when in fact, all you have to do is go into a court to sign paper? Because the bigness of it signals serious intention. He says very often when it comes to communication and anything to do with human beings and psychology, it's actually what you didn't have to say, it's actually what you didn't have to say that you say that matters. And I found that fascinating. I'd like to stop it. I put my phone on timer and now it's going off. Right, I will go through this quickly. So this model is the Kano model, which is really, really interesting. So if you see at the bottom there, you've got threshold attributes, which is your passport into the category. Like if you don't get, it's like if you're not making fresh bread, you're not even in the game. Performance attributes are in the middle, and obviously it's best to optimize those, because the more you optimize those, the more customer satisfaction you get. But then there's that third line, which is excitement attributes. And sometimes, if you look at a graph, sometimes your performance attributes can be a little less, but your excitement attribute actually makes the thing more memorable. So he was saying that the Kano attribute for Uber is the little map. You'd actually be prepared to wait a little longer for your car if you know that it's coming, because you can actually see it coming. And he says, so this is a prime example of what he was talking about, which won Grand Prix Mobile and in Titanium. And it's an example of something being a little bit over the top, a little bit odd and bizarre, and actually being far more effective for that. And it was called the Whopper Detour.
Burger King wants you to come here. Yes, to McDonald's.
Burger King is trolling its fast food rival
With a promotion available through the Burger King mobile app.
Yeah, but there is a small catch.
So I saw this Burger King commercial where you can
Get a Whopper for a penny.
only if you open the app while you're at McDonald's.
You have to go to McDonald's for a Whopper?
Whopper? Use Burger King's BK app. Then be within 600 feet of a McDonald's restaurant.
Burger King geofenced over 14,000
McDonald's restaurants in the U.S.
Unbelievable.
So I parked my news car about 100 feet from a McDonald's.
I'm at McDonald's getting a coupon for Burger King. I almost feel like I'm stealing.
The Whopper Detour. This is a really cool promo, guys. How fun is this?
That's crazy.
So this is a prime example of what he was talking about. In that it's a couponing idea. And this is a quote from Fernando Machado, who's the CMO of Burger King, saying, well, when they did couponing, nobody really did it, but when they made you go to McDonald's to redeem and then go back to Burger King, everybody did it. So it's a prime example of it wasn't efficient, but it was incredibly effective because it wasn't efficient. It was a little bit over the top, a little bit bizarre and distinctive. The last thing Maurice Sutherland said was that there's a bias inherently in a lot of business, where business tends to default to the expected. And the reason is that if you have a creative suggestion, you have to get it approved by rational people. And the same thing is not true the other way around. And I mean, this is my life, so yeah, I'll just let you. One quick insight, and then I'll finish off with a South African ad that won gold. There was a talk by David Droga, who famously, Droga 5 is one of the last standing independent agencies not owned by a network company in the world, highly creative, And they sold earlier this year to Accenture Interactive. Q, clicking of worry beads in creative departments all over the world. They gave a talk at Cannes. It's 2 months into the merger. They gave a talk at Cannes. That was the queue to get in. It went all the way up. So the Palais has about 4 stories. That queue went up. Everyone wanted to see. But it was really interesting because, and I think, you know, we touched on this morning, that the brand experience is far more than just the communication. It's every single touch point. And David Droga made the point that merging with Accenture Interactive makes his canvas 5 times bigger, because ad agencies like us don't get access to the CEO, they don't get access to the C-suite. We can't touch most of the brand experience. We get access to that bit, which is the communication. We can't touch most of the rest of the brand experience. And he was saying, and it made sense to me, that I want to be able to get at those things. So Accenture, not only do they have the power and to employ the kind of people who can create the kind of tech things that most agencies can't do. I mean, to be fair, agencies can't pay highly qualified tech people. We can't retain them. We just don't keep them interested. But places like Accenture Interactive can. And they also have access to a much broader level of decision making in companies. And so David Droga was saying, and I agree with him, it's a much bigger playing field for me. I can bring my creative thinking to the whole brand experience now, which I thought was really exciting. I think, you know, Natalie will touch on this as well, but human insights always work. Even though they're can judges, they're still human beings. And something that makes you laugh, something that makes you cringe, something that you recognize. And this was a South African commercial, it was a South African commercial on gold. And it's interesting because it is highly culturally specific, and yet the insight is universal enough that everybody laughs. So then it was for City Lodge. It's wonderful because it's in Zulu and in English. So, you know, a Zulu radio ad won gold can, fantastic. But the insight is that if you want to save money on holiday by going and staying with your family, that is not free, right? You think staying with your family is free? It is not free. You will pay. So the particular expression or execution of these ads is highly localized, but the insight is universal enough that if you're from Uruguay, if you're from London, you get this. So I'm going to play, I love this campaign, I'm really proud of it, so I'm going to play it to you. Okay, subtitles.
Otium, isikhathi samaholiday, isikhathi sokuyophola elokishini. Shaya imoto siyembangela. Umbhede wawulala wona usemncane usekhona. Umbhede wempahla mahala. Uzoshawa umoya phakathi kwemephe yomchamo. Umnandi makhona wena siyafa insini. Sineka mahala. Okusho ukuthi game yakho kuyothenga igrocery. Kusasa sipitwa impahla ngoba sithi igrocery yakho. Sicela uKrismasi maholo. Uphathele nomzala wakho umsebenzi nje kubelungu bakho. Ngimali yethu. Wafela umali kulethana. Yini ndiyamana. Indawo yokuhlala nombhedo nginamlephe phela ku-680 rand. It's how much?